and I am the host of Otherworldly, the Changing Times, Changing Worlds conference Wednesday show, or it's like workshops or panels. Tonight will be more like a workshop because I'm going to be giving a workshop that I have given since apparently I found some notes, 2008, but it is the kind of useful thing. It is not specialized, but it is useful tips for taking care of the kind of first aid from all sorts of disciplines. As I've raised children and had all kinds of things I have tripped over. For instance, if you saw the announcement, you've seen a picture of plantain. And plantain is probably my favorite herb. It's the one I teach kids. When I'm teaching kids herbalism, I think herbalism is a great thing to teach children. Let me start out with the usual caveat. I am not a doctor. I am not a medical professional of any sort. I'm not giving you any official medical advice. I am another mother who is sharing what I have found to be useful. And please take it under advisement with the, oh, for goodness sakes, please be careful and aware. Good story to start with. My sister came in once with a sunburn. And I said, well, I've got an aloe plant here. Take one of the leaves, split it, rub it on your face. You'll feel better. She came to me a few minutes later and said, is it supposed to burn? Like, no, it's not supposed to burn. Go wash it off. Any herb, the only reason you're using it is because you think it's going to do you some good. If it wasn't effective, you wouldn't be using it. If it is effective, it can be having an atypical reaction. Most people, aloe soothes a burn. In her case, and I think there's something like 150 different varieties of aloe, the one I had made her skin feel like it was burning. She was having an allergic reaction to it. Any herb, but also when you're using medicine, I don't care if it's been tested on 2 million people out there. If you're having a bad reaction to it, discontinue it. And if you need to, get some help. So when you are using herbs, remember that your reaction may not be what everybody else's reaction was. So that's a really good place to start. But when I'm teaching kids herbs, I start out usually with teaching them plantain. Plantain is the one that we saw on, gee, I wonder if I can find my collection of herb pictures. I have them in, not being a computer-oriented person, I have them in a great big notebook where I can show you pictures, but plantain is a it's got very wide leaves. There's two kinds of plantain. English plantain has long, narrow leaves. Plantain, it's the one that was in the picture of the thing. We call it nature's Band-Aid, but more impressive than taking it, crushing the leaf and putting it on a scrape or a cut is if you get a bee sting or a bug bite, it will take away the itch, or the sting. And I cannot tell you how many times I have told somebody that, and I said, here, and I reach over and I find one, because plantain grows usually where it's disturbed, where people walk on it. It's on the side of the road. It's in your lawn, and it is, and people will, so it's usually in your lawn. Find it. It's got very ridged leaves, and It would really help if I had a picture for you, and I am not immediately finding it. I should have queued that up. But it makes the sting go away. So many times I say, here, that somebody's got, is it sting? And I rub the crushed leaf on it, and they look at me like, the sting went away. Yeah, it does. That fast. Very cool. Kids love it. And of course, they love telling their friends. But when you can give somebody something that will make a bug bite not itch and a bee sting not sting, and will make your cuts and scrapes go away, cool. That is definitely something that that kids are fond of. The second and sometimes first herb, that is my favorite herb, but the first one that I sometimes teach them is jewelweed. Jewelweed is also called touch-me-not, and we used to play with them when I was a kid. It grows little tiny. It's sometimes called spotted touch-me-not or spotted jewelweed. It's got yellow orange flowers. They bloom around late August, usually in very wet places. And after the flowers come little things that are like bananas, that are shaped like bananas, about that big. But if you touch them, they explode. And we used to do that. And funniest thing I ever saw, I saw a bee light it, sit on one once and exploded under him, and we all laughed because humans are cruel. Well, if nobody's hurt, there's no harm in it. But you take that whole plant and you rub it on poison ivy, and it neutralizes the poison ivy oil. Now, this is very big. This is not an itch soother. It neutralizes the oil. This is important because if you have poison ivy oil, it passes from one thing in it. It's an oil. If you had oil, if you were frying something and you got it on your hands, and then you get it on your clothes, if you didn't wash your hands, you'd get it on, you get it on one hand, you might get it on your face. You remember the beginning of the pandemic, don't touch your face. Things pass. Poison ivy oil passes. What's worse, it's in the ivy vines, it's in the leaves, it's in the roots, it's in every part of the poison ivy. You can be crawling over a stone wall or leaning on a tree in the middle of winter and get a poison ivy rash because the poison ivy oil is in it. You can have been inside your house if you have indoor-outdoor pets and wonder where this mystery rash came from, and it's because your cat or dog went through some poison ivy, came inside, you pet them, or you might have it on your shins because the cat rubbed up against your leg. And like, where did this funny rash come from? It's because you have an indoor-outdoor cat, and they went out and carefully collected some poison ivy oil on the outside of their fur and got it on you. You get
Typicon?
Yes?
Now that I finished my dinner, I'm kind of hoping I can hold this up so you can see it.
Okay, let's see if we can get it on you. So people
You're going to have to take your picture down, Bill.
Probably.
All we're seeing is the earth.
Yeah. All right. It makes some.
Call me
reasons
again.
I've given up on those backgrounds.
Yeah, because
fun, but
I finally opened up this book about magic and medicine of plants, and I went right to plantains.
Allow me to say that one of my favorite herbal books is the old Reader's Digest. I think it came out in the 80s. It's a Magic and Medicine of Plants. When I'm judging an herbal book, I look for, does it have clear images? So can you identify the plant from it? I tell everybody, go out and get a copy of Peterson's Guide from wherever you live, and start using that to identify things. So they have very good identification drawings in there.
I believe that this is the book we have. All right, so
give it a shot, Griffin.
All right, come on. All right. Oh, choose virtual background. None.
There you go.
There you go. Now we'll be able to see the book. Now, you see this? So the skinny leaf ones are the ones that have the, that's English plantain, and the ones with the wide leaves are what we call American plantain.
Yeah, I see common plantain listed here.
The Indians called it white man's footprints because this was brought over because it is such a useful herb that the English colonists would not leave it behind. Flip through a couple other pictures and show them, Bill, because this is a really good book, and I strongly suggest if you can find it in a used bookstore, you can often find them used on Amazon for almost no money.
They show the cover.
Yeah,
although if it's Reader's Digest, they will change the cover a few times with different editions.
But it's Reader's Digest, and it is an excellent book.
Yeah,
I have probably.
And by the way, I checked the colophon, and this is a 1986 edition, which puts it right in the zone. Well, now that I finally cracked it,
are you going to flash me a couple others, or shall I go on to something else?
Well, what were you after we talked about plantain? You were talking about.
Okay, then the next thing I was talking about was jewelweed. Yeah, show them jewelweed. This is important because if you're out there and you bump into poison ivy, you just look around, and jewelweed tends to grow where poison ivy grows, and you just rub it on yourself. And if you rub. The difficulty with that is that jewelweed is very frost tender. Also, isn't going to come up so you can identify it until after, say, Memorial Day. And at first frost, it's going to turn black and die. So that's when I started making herbal preparations. Here is the big, mysterious, spooky foo, how to make a ointment. You take a jar, your clean peanut butter jar or whatever, ball jar, you stuff as much of the entire plant, just rip it up by the roots, rinse off the dirt off, put it in the jar, crush it in as close as you can, cover it with olive oil. Some people like almond oil, but I think a lot fewer people are allergic to olive oil than they are to almond. So
and the book, I'm sorry to say, the book does not mention jewelweed.
Does it say touch me not?
Oh, let's check that, because otherwise there's nothing between Jesus Christ and Jews ancient.
Okay. But
so let's check touch me not.
That is why I have 40 herb books. Because they don't all have them. But I always say go out and get your Peterson's Guide so that you can find what's near you. It's really very nice that to have some rare herb that does something cool. But if you have to go to the health food store and buy it from China or India or Africa or even the American Southwest, it's not going to do you a lot of good. But herbs are full of nature's redundancy, and you could probably find something that will work that's growing nearby. As a matter of fact, it is, as long as this is a changing times, changing world venue, we can say so are you still looking? Okay, I'll take it back.
I could not then find touch me not either.
Okay, so we should look it up at some point, but it's basically you take the whole plant, you stuff it in, you cover it with olive oil. Every day or so, because the stems are hollow and the air that was inside the stems will come to the top, you might need to add a little bit more oil to make sure that it stays underneath. Let it sit there for a couple weeks. I put it on the front porch so that it's slightly warmed. And then you strain it out, squeeze out every drop of this precious oil because why waste it? And then if you melt, I use about a tablespoon of beeswax to a tablespoon of oil. You melt some beeswax in it and it firms it up. Cool thing is you can then decide how much you want to put in. The more beeswax, of course, the more expensive, because beeswax is expensive. But I suppose it depends on it's worth gold if you've got a poison ivy rash. But that will show that'll determine how firm it is. You could use the oil all by itself, because that's where the jewelweed is. The jewelweed juice is it, and it neutralizes the oil. It's not soothing it, it's making it go away. And so to keep it from passing it on, I put it in little flat cans that are about like that. And I pass it out to EMTs. I pass it out to school nurses. I pass it out to anybody who is going to woodsmen. I was selling it one season to a chainsaw supply place, because guys going in the woods are going to get in poison ivy. And one of our friends had his drove an hour to come and get a jar of it to take to one of his. Somebody had a car accident, and they pulled her out of the broken glass and raspberry thorns beside the road, and poison ivy. So there she was in the hospital, and all they could offer her was a calamine lotion. But this makes it go away. I've had kids put it on that I went and gave the school nurse some, and they put it on. They had poison ivy ointment, rash all over them, and it was almost gone the next day. And next day in this particular story was prom.
I just pushed a link to the Forest Service entry for jewelweed.
Share screen. I think you can share the screen. Go for it.
All right. Well, let me try it.
Yeah. And but basically, yeah, it neutralizes it. I have only ever seen this not work once, and that time it had already been a week, and it had entered the person's bloodstream. They were on steroids
I'm not able to share.
Oh, that's too bad.
Host has disabled.
I have not. Share screen.
Now it's saying I can. My first attempt.
Okay, there. Because this stuff is magical stuff, and there it is. It's more orange in this picture than I am seeing. That usually I see kind of yellowish, but the one below it is
yeah, and they have, well,
you can't see the little pods. Okay, now in the middle picture you can see the little pods hanging from them, but that's what we used to play with. But that's what it looks like. Look at it, get that, rub it on yourself. And while it is still there, usually in July to August, I will grab it. I will make the oil. I will add I will melt in some beeswax so that it will, so that we can, it becomes an ointment, and it's not less likely to drip all over the place.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I'm looking at the range map that says we should be able to find it anywhere in our area. You got to really be down in the Southwest to not find it.
Yeah, it's real because it needs moisture. It's a moisture plant. So anyway, but that's weed. I want to get past just herbs, but I figured I'd start with herbs because they're there, and I like teaching children about them because they're useful. Yes, Starwolf, I will definitely get to crystals. But other things I teach children. I teach children that mint is good for a stomach ache, and so is ginger. I teach if you can find and this is useful for adults too. If you can find mullein, which is a very long, tall stalk, yellow flowers up at the top, and big velvety leaves at the bottom, and I'm talking big leaves. take those leaves, dry them, crush them, keep them in a jar. Those leaves are really good. You can make a tea, but if you've got that horrible, you can't breathe, pneumonia, bronchitis, that your lungs are full of crap, and if you can deal with it, you can put this in a pipe and smoke it, or you can put it on a smudge. You can use it like a smudge and put it on a piece of charcoal and inhale it. And this, you better be either on the back porch or over in the bathroom over the sink, because you're going to be bringing up gobs of that nasty phlegm from your lungs. It's very, very good. And that is the mullein leaf. There's other things that you want. Okay. So if you're using herbs, one of the things I want, oh, there's the mullein. Thank you.
Yes.
Ta-da!
Ta-da. And so you've probably all seen this. Now, I don't know where they got that mullein plant, because in my experience, only 2 or 3 of the leaves will open and the flowers will come out at once. Those flowers, you do the same thing. You make an oil. Anytime you want to make an oil, you simply put the plant in a jar of the oil and then later strain it. That's how you can get St. John's wort oil. St. John's wort oil is very good for any kind of wounds. It's usually flowering around the summer solstice, which is St. John's Day, which is where the name came from. But the cool thing is, and this is what kids like, is it turns the oil red, which is why they thought that it would be good for herbs, for wounds, because you get this red herb. But in my experience, you have to go out and you have to pick the flowers and put them in. Then you go the next day and get a few more and put them in. And mullein flower oil is good for earaches, but that's getting beyond children. But if you have children, you might want that. But just basic herbalism things. You pick the leaves and they're young before the flowers form, if possible. You pick the flowers when they've just opened. You pick the fruit when it's ripe. You pick the seeds when they turn brown. You collect roots in the fall when they have stored all of the good stuff in them. You dry herbs in the shade. You harvest herbs in the morning before, when the dew is evaporated, but before the sun is starting to make the essence. You know, when it smells really good, that's because the essence of the herb is going into the air, and you want as much of it in the herb as you can. Only pick what you're going to use. Don't pick more than 1/3 of whatever is in an area. Never pick endangered plants. If you thank the plants. Now, this is one of the things that is very strange. Plants want to be used. Plants are liable to turn up. If you see a plant you have never seen before suddenly appear in your garden or right where you live, look it up, find out what it does, and it probably is something that is wrong with you. They come and they volunteer, and yes, thank them, but be aware that they do want to be used. I mean, most of us would not like to be eaten and used up, but plants have that relationship with us. And that is, and if that plant has come to you, it may be specifically for you. It may not be something that will help other people, but it is there for you. But if you look it up, for instance, I had a friend whose mother just loved the way the green goo is what we called it, because almost any plant, when soaked in oil, it will turn the oil green, and then we call it green goo. But that will she's put that on her feet and said it cleared up her poison ivy. So I went back to my Peterson's guide and I looked up, and yes, plantain is a specific, not plantain, jewelweed is a specific for curing the athlete's foot. Like, okay.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that. And that was an accidental discovery. And I looked it up. I was like, oh, it also does athlete's foot. So, but plants want to help. And I think that is something that we should be grateful and be aware of them, but don't be afraid. Be afraid of wasting them. Be afraid of damaging them unnecessarily. But using them is they're happy with it. A tea, and this is going to be important because you've probably had teas that are just because they're delicious, but a tea is usually steeped for about 3 minutes and to get the flavor out. But if you want it to be medicinal, usually you'll go 10 minutes, and then it won't be as yummy, but it will be more medicinally impure. And that's an infusion.
Well, and that's like the difference between an infusion and a decoction. Because if I use dandelion leaves,
that's what I was going to get it. You're doing a decoction, you have boiled it, and you will generally use a decoction for if you're doing the harder parts of the plants, the roots.
Well, dandelion root, yeah.
Well, the roots, oh gosh, you try and cut a dandelion or a burdock root once it's already hard. Oh my goodness.
I have a
chop it first before you try it. But if it's a seed, if it's a bark, you probably have to boil it to get it through. If you are doing one herb at a time, that's what we refer to as a simple, and that's probably where you should start. But when you get more familiar with them, you can make mixed things, and they will interact. And it was the 90s before they had books that told you about herb and drug interactions. It took them way too long.
Yeah.
Drugs and vitamins do interact. So you have to be careful and keep track of those things. So that is, for teas, is just water getting the stuff out of the plant. Oil is when you soak it in the plant in the oil. You can do a cold infusion, as I suggested, by leaving it sitting in the sun for a couple of weeks. So you could do a warm infusion by spending 10 days with it on just slightly warmed on the stove. You'd make an ointment by taking an oil and putting a little wax in it. Half and half makes a nice soft ointment. A tincture is when you soak the herb in vinegar or in alcohol. Alcohol will generally last about 10 years, and a vinegar tincture, which is probably something that we have more access to, will last a year. So that'll probably work just fine for most of the things you'll have to deal with. A syrup is if you make a simple syrup out of, you can use honey, or you can use sugar and water, and you put about an ounce of an herb to a pint of water and reduce it. And when I make cough syrups, and I'm going to give you a recipe for a cough syrup here. Where is it? Cough syrup. No, that's the 4 Thieves vinegar. Cough syrup. I make a decoction of licorice root, aniseed, burdock root, rose hips, cherry bark, and I also like to add coltsfoot. Coltsfoot is a wonderful herb that tastes a lot like dirt. Except that now that I'm used to it, when I taste it, it tastes like, oh, I'm going to feel relief. It clears up your sinuses and stops the postnasal drip. And there's hardly a cough in the world that doesn't come with postnasal drip. So that's why I put that in my cough syrup. And then after you start out by boiling whatever's hard, like the aniseeds or licorice roots, and then then you turn off the heat and soak any leaves that you're going to be putting in there, and then you like the coltsfoot, and then you strain it, and then you add enough honey to make it into a syrup. Why do you put the syrup in? Well, A, honey is magical all by itself, and B, it's going to make your it's going to soothe throat, and it's going to keep it from going bad. if you don't think you have put quite enough honey in it, you can keep it in the refrigerator. But I first made cough syrup for a friend of mine who was allergic to all artificial colors, allergic to alcohol, and had a horrible, horrible cough, bronchitis. And so I was able to make her a cough syrup. That is more effective than anything I've ever taken. And usually you can't get it without having without having artificial colors and alcohol in it. And just she was finding she had to pay 3 times as much to get the cough syrup without alcohol. Why do they put alcohol in? Because it makes it last longer. It saves it. It's like they put glycerin in. But that is another cough syrup. You could just use 2 ounces of honey and 2 ounces of lemon juice, and then if you don't have an allergy to alcohol, add an ounce of brandy or bourbon or whiskey or whatever. Because yes, that does how it relaxes so that you don't be coughing as much. I like something that is an expectorant, which helps you cough things up. It strengthens your lungs more than I like cough suppressant. Cough suppressant is only when the cough is exhausting you and it's really getting you ill. Now, what was the other thing I was about to remind? There's so many things that I have come up with over the. I should probably say there is a book called Jijo. How do I spell that? Do I have that in my bibliography? No, not in that one. Okay, I'm going to with some. Okay, where is I see practical difference between ethanol isopropyl. Yes, I think that it's very important to say anything that you're going to be ingesting should be an ingestible alcohol.
Ethanol.
Use that which
rubbing
you
alcohol.
drink. Do not use rubbing alcohol on that. That's even if you're using it to, and we used to use it to disinfect drinking horn after we cleaned it. Only use drinking, you use Everclear. But,
I was going to say, should I just find a moonshiner and get my ethanol that way?
You could get it that way, or you could go to the liquor store and get whatever is the cheapest and strongest stuff that you can.
They sell, okay.
Strongest.
I wonder
if you want to make it for disinfecting. If you want it for putting in a cough syrup, put whatever you like the taste of, because but if it's outside the body, putting alcohol is one thing, but inside the body, no.
Well, that's all good, because I was thinking about it, and we saw some show, and they were talking to some museum curator who had all these critters in a bottle, and one of his comments was, 70% ethanol. And I realized, when was the last time you could buy ethanol rubbing alcohol, which would, of course, be denatured at that point?
Yeah, that was denatured when I was a kid. But when we were, I'm going to tell you a story that's going to make me sound a little whacked, but in this audience, I'll probably go by. When I was in Kauai, I went there for a healing conference with the Huna healers, Serge King and those folks. And it was cheaper if I went earlier. So I went a few days early, and I went to a national park, and I had just been to the museum and seen that they had these wonderful healing plants that were endangered. And so since there was nobody else around, I sat down by the plant just off the side of the path, and I went into a light trance, and I said, I'm really sorry to hear that you are endangered, and want to apologize for in as much as I can for humans doing that to you. And the plant said, it's all right, we'll be fine. And I said, yeah, but I see that you're endangered. And they said, oh, well, we've taken care of that. We're really sorry, but we're just not going to be medicinal anymore. That yes, we were over harvested to the point near extinction. So we stopped being medicinal, and we're really sorry we can't help you, but we had to do it to protect ourselves. It's like, you can do that? And say, yeah, we apologize, but we had to. So when you think about that, think about how in the 70s, and you may be, some of the audience may be too young for this, but in the I guess it was in the 80s, the Germans and Europeans were coming out with St. John's wort was the best thing for depression. It was wonderful. It would cure so many things. And in the aughts, they were coming out when it's, oh, well, those studies must have been wrong because this isn't doing a damn thing. But if you think about how it would suddenly been, they had started mass producing it, mass growing it, and making it into a product to sell, make money with, the chances are that what happened was the St. John's wort had to do that too.
Punched out and went home.
Yeah, there's another story about a anthropologist who was down in the rainforests in South America, and he was shown, well, this little boy had a tumor, but the plant, we gave him this plant and it healed him, and showed him pictures that convinced him that the kid had a tumor and had gotten better, and said, this is amazing. What plant is it? And he started writing it down and scribbling, and it was like, if this cures cancer, this is wonderful. And his guide was translating, and the people around him all started laughing. He said, why are they laughing? And he said, the plant won't cure cancer in America. It wanted to cure that boy. It's not going to, it came to that boy because it wanted to help him. It's not going to, you can't harvest this plant and take it to America and cure cancer in America. The plants in America would want to have to help you. And everybody in the tribe understood that this crazy person thought that a plant would work universally for everybody. And that's what they keep doing in pharmacy, is they're trying to look up what the chemical components in a plant are and trying to put it into, and it will work to a certain extent. Let's face it, aspirin is based on the willow bark. But I was very relieved to discover that willow bark tea is not nasty. If you swallow an aspirin, if you've ever not had enough water while you're swallowing an aspirin, it is nasty. But if you but willow bark tea is actually rather pleasant. And as I said, while the coltsfoot does tend to taste a little bit like dirt, it also tastes a little bit like, oh God, I'm going to feel so much better. Nice thing about coltsfoot is it'll clear your sinuses, but it doesn't leave you doped like the diphenhydramine does. But going back to your mileage may vary. How a plant interacts with you is going to be different. But we use herbs when they are safe. They are often as effective, or in my experience, more effective than some of the over-the-counter things. But I'm going to go back to, everybody has an idiosyncratic reaction to almost anything. It's going to be, you have to watch carefully and see, is this going to be something that is good for you? But yeah, God, there's so many things I wanted to share. I'm going to mention Essiac tea because this is something I tripped over when my mother had called me and made that wonderful phone call no parent wants to make to each of her kids serially, saying, hi, I have liver cancer and they've given me 3 months to live. And a week or so later, I was in the health food store and I saw a book on Essiac, and I looked at it, and Essiac is a collection of herbs. It's an herbal drink that you can make, and it was found by a woman The name Essiac comes from the woman, the nurse's name was Casey, and she spelled it backwards, and it became Essiac. And Essiac, and she made a tea with it, and it helped many, many people survive cancer who might not otherwise have had cancer. Who basically they only tested on people who the doctors had already written off, and it consists of burdock root, sheep sorrel, turkey rhubarb, and slippery elm, all of which have in our backyard. But I was buying mine from the health food store where they mixed it up for us, and the guy who runs it's a shaman, and he blessed each of them. And basically I said, Mom, I don't know if this is going to do anything, but all I know is that I'm probably going to be alive for another 30 years, and I don't want to spend that 30 years feeling that I should have told you about this and didn't. And so she, figuring she only had 2 months to live, figured she might as well humor her crazy daughter, and she started taking it. 3 years later, her doctor said, Pat, I have no idea why you're still alive. Nobody with liver cancer lives 3 years. And she said, well, the only thing I can think of is I'm taking that stuff my daughter gave me. He's, that's that Bernie Siegel foolish, And she said, well, if I'm the only one of your patients that's lived this long, and he said, can I borrow the book? Which is, I guess, why she liked him as a doctor. My feeling is, it especially with what I've already said about herbs, it may help, it may not. But she took it for 3 years, then she stopped taking it and died 2 months later. She had cleaned her house top to bottom, gone on 5 different cruises with my father, had left instructions for us on how to take care of him, and had taken everything off her bucket list except spending a year in Paris, which my father was not interested in. And it was, so I'm just going to go with, okay, it probably will not help everybody. One of the things it does seem to help with is reducing the side effects of chemo, which is what she was kind of hoping for. And then surprises. Okay, so that's SCX, another herbal thing. Another herbal thing that I would share with you is something called 4 Thieves vinegar, which is you put various herbs into vinegar. That makes it a tincture. And then you can use it to wash your hands, to disinfect. You can use it as a salad dressing. You can put some of it in water, maybe with some honey, and drink it. The name 4 Thieves vinegar comes from the story of there was a plague. Fill in your favorite plague, because it seems to come up every time there's a plague. Whether it's yellow jack in New Orleans, or whether it's a bubonic plague. Chaos reigns. People are dropping dead in the streets. Some thieves are going into the houses where they should be quarantined and are escaping with loot. And they finally catch them, and the judge says, "We're just you're sentenced to death. Why? By the way, why didn't you catch it when you're going into the quarantine areas?" And they said, "Well, that was because of the vinegar our mother makes." And he spared their lives in exchange for giving them the recipe. And there are many, many versions. Frequent versions, they have, most of them include lavender, thyme, rosemary, sage, peppermint, and let's start out with a whole bunch of garlic. Other things they put in are lemon balm, hyssop, motherwort, cloves, rue, camphor, wormwood, juniper, cinnamon. Yeah, I think basically everybody puts their favorite herbs in. But basically you put it in the vinegar, strain it out after it sat there for 2 or 3 weeks. And actually it's quite a very nice, spicy, mostly garlic, some clove vinegar, and does make a nice salad dressing, makes a nice tea if you mix it with tea and honey. You can make your own, okay, getting back to just motherly advice, you can make your own disinfectant wipes if you take a roll of paper towels and then take a half a cup of white vinegar and then put some tea tree oil, maybe a little lemon essential oil, and a quarter of a cup of water, and, you know, stack them and soak it in that. That'll make your own disinfectant wipes. It doesn't have to be alcohol. What other things do I want to tell you? That's the herbal stuff. That I have so much. If you go to my website, which I noticed, I checked it just before I started the show, and it's in horrible, horrible shape, but it's chipicon@wordpress.com. See, I'll give you a, and I've got herbal remedies. I've got a lot of things in there. And feel free to, let's see, put that in the chat there. And you can go look there. There's some, those recipes are in it. I've got a lot of handouts of various things. But other things I really wanted to tell you more things. One of the things I don't leave home without is a bottle of homeopathic arnica, because if I bark my shins on the toe bulb or the back of the car, if I trip and fall, if I, you know, bruise myself or whack myself, and often I don't bruise, because the first thing I do is I take the 4 little teeny homeopathic pills, and then I don't bruise. Is that lovely? And the other thing I carry with me is Rescue Remedy, which is it's a tincture that comes in little bottles with a dropper, and they now sell them in pastilles and in, and the kids got a spritz spray. You spray it right in your mouth instead. I bet they would have loved that when they were little, because usually I would just take the dropper full and put it in a cup of water and give it to them to drink. And it's good for dealing with the after effects of trauma or shock. If the kid's gotten upset, you give them that, it chills them right out. It's if you don't know how to just energetically ground and center, and boy, you should definitely teach your kids to ground and center. That's the first thing. Yes, there's wonderful stories on SEAC that are definitely worth looking up. Another piece of really useful information came from the healing conference that I went to. Serge King's healing advice starts with take the nail out. And this should not need to be said, but first thing you have to do is remove the cause of whatever is creating the problem. He told a story about a woman who came to him and he did his Huna magic on her. She had an earache, and he said, well, have you been to the doctor? And she said the doctor can't do anything. So he made the pain go away. And she was back in a couple of weeks, this happened 2 or 3 times. And then he saw her again and said, how's your ear? And she said, oh, yes, fine. I went to the doctor and he found deep inside the ear canal, there was a little piece of cotton from a Q-tip, and it had gotten infected, and the infection keep coming back. And he said, I thought you said you'd been to the doctor. He said, well, what I said was the doctor couldn't help, because I didn't think the doctor could help. So I hadn't gone to see him yet. So she had this little piece of infected stuff in her ear, causing her continual things. If you have a nail that has gone through your hand, you pull the nail out before you heal it. This is one of the warnings they keep giving you with comfrey. Comfrey knits your tissue and skin together. Don't use the comfrey until you have thoroughly cleaned the wound, because if it heals up with dirt inside, you're going to keep the infection going. You're going to lock the infection in. You don't want to do that. Cleaning a wound, the best thing you can do for almost any, your best thing to use is soap and water. Why soap? Because it breaks down oils, and the soap will break down the oils. The water will get the dirt and the other things that you really don't want in your inside a wound out. You want to get that out. Oh, I forgot. I got distracted. I got to tell you about honey. You may be, if I don't know if you're the right age group, but if not, then you can be the old wise woman who tells the younger people. Honey is the best thing for diaper rash. Honey will, if you can put it, it will take care of diaper rash. It will stop bleeding wounds. It will heal. It is a natural disinfectant. It is the only time honey has been, is not a disinfectant. If you can, they had horror stories about honey having botulism in it back in the 80s and said, don't give it to anybody who's less than a year old. Adulterated honey, if they have watered it, if they have made a sugar syrup or something, sugar syrup does not really support bacterial growth that much either, but honey will not support it. And if somebody got botulism from a jar of honey, I'm absolutely certain that honey was adulterated. But honey is just wonderful. When I told my mother about using it on diaper rash, and that was a weird thing. I was being a nanny, and I was taking care. One of the little kids said his diaper rash was so bad, had blood. He had open, bloody wounds on his poor little round butt. And then I heard somebody say, honey, put honey on it. And I looked around, there was nobody in the room. Now, I don't hear voices. I make fun of people who hear voices. Except, of course, now that I'm hanging around with a lot of psychic people, in which case I don't make a lot of fun of people. Depends on the situation. Anyway, so I figured, what could it hurt? I tried it on one side, one buttock, and not the other. And the next morning I woke up and there's blood running down the other side, and the other one, it's all healed up. So when I had kids, I used honey if they showed any sign of diaper rash. And my mother told me that her friends were nurses, would sneak honey into the hospital to use on the bed sores of patients. And when my husband was in the hospital, we'd bring honey in to put in bed sores on his. I understand that hospitals have heard of this, and they make a special sterilized honey, which doesn't work quite as well. But yeah, honey by itself. So you could see putting beeswax in with the medicated oil, the herbal oils, would probably have a positive effect. But yeah, take the nail out first. So always clean anything first. When you do, you can use burdock. They're drawing herbs that, like burdock, dandelion, most of the things that people work so very hard to get out of their yards. Why have they volunteered to be in your yard? Because you freaking need them. But the dandelion, the burdock, the nettle, these things will suck the poison out of a wound. You just put a little boiling water on it to soften them up and put them right on the wound. I usually, what I'll do is I'll take a gauze pad and put it in between two sides so that you're not putting herbs into an open wound. But you need the gauze on the outside to hold it on, and then you tape it on. We had a cat that we put it on. We thought we were going to lose her tail, but I figured, okay, it's going to take 2 or 3 days before the vet can take it in, and we put that on, and the cat. Boy, trying to tape a poultice to a cat's tail is a trick and a half. A, they don't want you to do it. B, it hurts already, and then you've got the hair in the way. It's a job, but it sucked the poison right out of it. It was just wonderful stuff. We should probably tell you back from when I was a kid, putting clove oil or powdered cloves on a toothache. It will make you numb. If you touch it with your tongue will go numb because powdered clove will do that. So many other things. Okay, there's a lot of energy healing. Let's just say there's RunValdr, there is Dynamind, there is therapeutic touch. Humans have energy, whether you call it ki, chi, prana, mana. If you put loving hands over a wound, and you don't even have to touch it, you can have it over it and just picture it going in. That energy is putting the energy that your cells need. Your cells need two things. They need nutrition and they need energy. Well, I suppose they also need hydration. You need the water too, but you need the nutrition and you need the energy. So if you put the energy into things, it will heal faster. And every one of you can do it. Every human being has the ability, unless they're on death's door, they will have that chi inside them available to put into a wound and make it heal faster. Cats and dogs, your pets, will come up and they will sit next to you or on you, and they will put that in there. It's just, they are so good at that, because they want to help and just loving anybody. Will trigger it. So if you, I remember when I was substitute teaching once, a kid had broken his arm and he said, sometimes it just aches. And I said, if you put your other hand over where it hurts and you think about it's going to, think about it feeling warm and imagine warmth coming out of your hand and going into your bone, it will make the pain go away. And he said, wow, it worked. Yes, it does. We should be teaching our children this. We should be letting them know how powerful every human being is. And yes, there are good techniques, whether it's Silva mind control or whether it is Reiki or whatever. Nice thing about Reiki and RunValdr and some of these other techniques is they put you a little trigger in your head so that it's easy to access. You don't have to quickly ground center, go into a trance. You can just do it without having to go to do rituals. The rituals are kind of pre-done for you, so that it helps you be able to do it faster. So that is, but yes, humans are psychic. Humans are natural healers. This is a thing that we have to be aware of and embrace, because the only prayer that isn't answered is the prayer that's not made. The only magic spell that never works is the one you don't cast. If you do not actually try to say, I want that energy to go into this other person, I want to heal this person, it's not going to happen. You have to let the universe know your intention. And so any of the energy things, I said I was going to do crystals. Now, crystals I put off to the end because we have Starwolf, and he is so good with them that you can go to YouTube and see several of his things. But I really want to mention, if you have a headache, take a rose quartz, and most of us have picked up a rose quartz somewhere around here, a tumbled rose quartz, and you put it in a glass of water and you let it sit there. No, it is not leaking bits of quartz into the water. What it's doing is it's putting rose quartz energy into the water. You then drink the water and it makes a lot of headaches go away. You put a lovely piece of kyanite or many of the other blue stones on an achy back or whatever. I have a lovely piece of kyanite. If my back starts hurting, I'll just tuck it in the back of the waistband of the thing. But, you know, the crystals, like the herbs, are your friends who want to help. Only they work on a much slower time frame, not slow in the healing, but if you want to talk to them, you really have to slow down a lot. And you can probably tell from my shows that it's very hard to slow me down. I talk very fast and I don't listen as well as I perhaps ought to. Acupressure is one of the things that my kids hated the most when I was learning acupressure. It's called Jijo, and if you look up acupressure, if you push really hard, now this is one of the primary points, the place where your the crack, if you hold your thumb up, ends right there, and you press, and what you do is you've got two sides and press there. Acupressure, you have to push hard enough till you feel a kind of a zing. There are places on your body, and you know who can find those places? Cats. Cats will walk across your body, and they're 6-pound cat will put like 500 pounds worth of weight on one spot, and you know, doesn't do anything here, doesn't do anything there. Suddenly they're like, wow, what was that? That's because they found one of the meridian spots. And there are meridian spots, and you're going to have to get the book. We could probably find somebody who could do a workshop. I took some workshops, and I immediately hooked on it. But like plants, they do many things. We were taught one that was for relieving heat because it was in midsummer and we won. And it was, I think it was along your sternum. And if you just kind of press fairly hard and you run down your sternum, and you hit to one spot, you found a spot. And then you press them about 20 times. Well, you can, as you can guess, if you find if your kid has got a health problem and you're finding the spot that makes them go, ah, they don't want you pressing that 20 times. They really, really hated it when mother was into acupressure. And yet, I remember once I had one of those head colds where you cannot breathe at all and you can't go to sleep because you'll drown. And I woke up. I was like, I didn't wake up. I suddenly sat up and I said, right, I got to try the acupressure. I looked around for the book, looked it up. I poked in 2 or 3 places, and I forget whether it was 15 minutes or 15 seconds. I think it was 15 seconds. My head was as clear as a bell. I took a deep breath and was like, whoa, that was fast. But if it was 15 minutes, I'll take that, you know? You get some really amazing, many of the stories that I've heard from other people who have discovered acupressure, it was like, okay, well, I pushed my ear to this place and that place. And it's very, it cleared up an infection before they got to the doctor. This is the kind of story you get with acupressure. But I tell you, the kids don't care for it. Rescue remedy, no big deal. Crystals, fun. Herbs, well, they don't like the ones that don't taste good. Put more honey in it. But I didn't get to invisible friends. Put something in the comments if you want me to do more of these things. I haven't gotten to kombucha and kefir and other live things that you eat. Other things that here's one. I got this one from the Foxfire books. If you don't know the Foxfire books, go to your local library. They were collecting folklore from the Appalachians. And there was if somebody had gotten burned, and you know how painful a burn can be. And if you don't have a lot of commercial medicine and painkillers, so what they would do is the grannies would suck the fire out. You take your burn thing and picture the heat and the damage coming out and spit it away. It's like, okay, a friend of mine at camping burned themselves. I said, what have I got to lose but my dignity? And I haven't got that anyway. So what the hell? This person, if it helps, let's try it. So I sucked and spit it away. Do spit it away. You don't want to take it into yourself. Duh. And the heat left faster. And I mean, it's not like if you blow on your soup, it cools it. If you got a sunburn and you blow on it, it feels better, right? But I just concentrated energetically on sucking the fire out of their tissue and spit it away. And no, I probably looked like a damn fool, but they said that they felt better. And only the person who is in pain gets to decide whether they are in pain or not, in my opinion. But as I say, put it in the comments if you would like me to go on more about there is so much cool stuff out there, because this is the stuff this is what I picked up as I raised children. Oh, the mana plates. I've mentioned this at other shows, but if somebody is coming to this one because they want to hear about things that they can use while raising children, if you take a sheet of aluminum foil and a sheet of take about a foot of plastic wrap and aluminum foil, fold it over itself into thirds, you now have 1, 2, 3 layers of aluminum foil, 3 layers of plastic wrap. Fold that again, you now have 6 layers. Fold it down to it's a convenient size and stick it in your junk drawer. And when the kids get a cut or bruise or something, they can come in, they can grab that sucker, put it on there. In about a minute, it will have stopped bleeding. It will stop. At this point, this is where you get to be mom at them and say, yes, wash it anyway. I don't care if it stopped bleeding, but wash it anyway. But this stuff will stop the bleeding and accelerate the healing. It has something to do with William Reich's orgone accumulation, and I've got another show coming up on that shortly. But that's just another thing that was around Chipakan's house when I was raising children. Chipakan will teach your children herbalism. Chipakan will teach them how to heal a wound with a piece of tinfoil and plastic wrap. Chipakan will poke you until you go ouch, but then you'll be able to breathe again. Chipakan will suck the fire out of your burn and make and dance around and make faces and kiss the boo-boo and make it better. I mean, that is your basic level of energy healing, is when a mother kisses a boo-boo and makes it better. So as I say, that is that. I have put my poor, pathetic, much neglected website on the thing. It's got at Chipakan at chipakan.wordpress.com is my website, and it's got a bunch of stuff on there which is really in desperate need of reorganization. So I'm going to hit the stop recording button now. Thank you all. I do want to remind you that there are lots of good and fun things coming up in
Otherworldly.
Otherworldly. I was just going to do my usual reminder
about the conference,
because we got the conference coming up, and it's coming up in on the November. See, I always have to look it up. I can't remember. November, maybe by October. I remember it's November 7th through the 13th. Evening workshops and panels, Monday through Friday, and all day long, Saturday and Sunday. And we've got some great guests coming. And so you want to tell your friends, and because it's going to be great. And meantime, we'll give you the free sample of Otherworldly. And really, we're not charging a lot. We're charging enough to pay for the Zoom accounts and stuff. So we're covering our costs.
And I got to say, having attended the conference for the first time this past year, if you think Otherworldly is great, this has got nothing on it.
We're trying to figure out ways for people to get together, because the way I'm going to push the stop recording, and we're trying to set up for people to be able to chat after workshops so that people can. Where's the record button? I minimize the, there it is. So thank you very much for coming, and this will be on YouTube shortly.